So John, he mentioned that we had a meeting on Tuesday, and Pastor had said some things. I wanted to share with you something that he just spoke about, and it really it stuck out in my head, and I couldn't stop thinking about it because it reminded me about something. And I'll kind of share how it ties into not only what Keller has been teaching us through the book, What's Wrong with the World, but also a conversation that I had with Samone earlier this week. It all kind of just came together for me. And I wanted to share with you the things that God had been putting on my heart. It really just clarified a lot of things for me. Especially considering, in order to start this conversation, we had to have a conversation about worldview, right? And hopefully since then, because it's been a while, now we're in March, our own worldview has become a little bit more clear. And remember, a worldview is our perceptions, our assumptions about what's wrong with this world, what we actually believe the solution is, and is our worldview biblical? So I know for me, things are clarifying much more than they have in the past. And I just want to share with you some of that clarity. But what Pastor had said in the meeting, that meant a lot. I think it really kind of honed in my own focus, was he talked about doing a Bible study outside of church at another church. And the place he did it at was beautiful, it was very comfortable, and while he was there, he admired the whole experience. As of course he was thinking about it in relationship to our church, right? And we're under construction, and just the big idea of where we're going, and what our church will eventually become and be like once construction is done, right? And when he finished his Bible study, this is the thought that came in his head. May I just share this? Oh, he's gone, so I'm going to share this. He said, this place is nice, but I don't want to build our church like this. Okay? He said something even more, it hit me, and this is what stuck. He said, I didn't give up my medical practice to make a church like this, right? And he wasn't poo-pooing on that church. He just had a clear vision of the church that God called him to be a part of, our church, okay? Now, the reason that stuck out was when he said it, something was triggered in my own spirit. A principle that I had learned a while back. I've shared it with our church before, but I'm going to share it again. There was a time I was part of an MMA team that was one of the toughest teams. They had come from Brazil. They were starting in Los Angeles, and they started in a little gym, and they were relocating. And the head coach of that gym, who was my coach, I knew he was relocating. We were in this season of liminal space where we were kind of just meeting at other gyms before we found our home. And then during that time, I had found a gym, a beautiful gym. It was a high-class gym. Normally, what do you guys pay for your gym membership? Like $20, $30? This is the kind of place you spend like $90, right? They have showers in their bathrooms that are nice. They provide towel services. And in this gym, there was a mat space and there was a ring. And it was much cleaner than the gym that we were in before. So I called him up and I said, Roberto, I found our gym. I know where we should relocate. He said, okay, Ben, let's go. Let's take me there and then buy me lunch after. And I said, okay. So I took him to this gym, this beautiful gym. I was excited about the potential of our future there. And at lunch, he said, I said, isn't that the place, Roberto? Isn't this where we should build our team? And he said, no, Ben, no. That kind of gym is going to make you soft. Okay? Tomorrow morning, pick me up again, and I'm going to take you to another gym. This is the kind of gym we need to be looking for. And then the gym he took me to the next day was Wildcard Boxing Club. It's a gym in Hollywood, off of Vine, really grimy. It's just, it's where everyone who's a boxer that has a dream goes to do the sport. I mean, people just do snot rockets on the ground. Showers filthy, but the message was clear. The message was clear. In that gym, that's where you become a fighter. There's a certain kind of spirit, there's a certain kind of energy that's necessary to become a fighter. So the place I wanted to go is a place that you go to become soft. The place that he showed me was a place that you go to become hard and strong. And I realized 10, 15 years later, after having gone on that journey with him, he was right. He was right. I remember another time as he was telling me about our logo. So the gym logo, what we were going to put on the banner once we got a new location. He asked me what I thought. Hey, what are your ideas? Like, what colors do you think we should have as part of our logo? And I remember telling him, because I was learning business at the time. I said, hey, you know what? As a matter of fact, I just learned this in business. I learned that one of the most successful marketing campaigns of all time was McDonald's. And the reason why McDonald's was so successful is because they had these bright colors, red and yellow. And you couldn't miss it while you were driving on the freeway. Your eyes would always be drawn to the red and yellow. So I said, we should do red and yellow. And he looked at me dead in my eyeballs. He said, I'm not making a McDonald's. And then I got the message. The message was clear. It's the same message as the kind of gym you get soft in. Like, what are you building? Right? But that message, that truth, it's built on an underlying principle, I realized. It's built on just a natural law. Okay, so I learned this later on as I trained. Some of you guys are really into bodybuilding. There's just a law, a principle of growth, and it's when you put yourself under a certain kind of pressure, a certain kind of intensity, your body will adapt to whatever you put it under. So you need to put it under that stress. It's just the law of your body. So if you don't put it under that stress, what's your body going to do? It's going to become soft. If you put it on a certain level of stress, eventually your body will adapt to it. That's just the law. That's just the principle. Now, the reason why I'm bringing that up is in my Bible, one of the proverbs that really changed the direction of how I began to understand how God speaks to his creation, the way that he wants us to do life, is that we have two Bibles. One Bible is obviously this physical book in front of me, but the other Bible is it's creation. It's the world, right? And the way this works is in the Proverbs, it says that there was this wise sage, right? And this wise sage, he was passing by a field and he was passing by a vineyard. Do you guys know this proverb? So he observed the vineyard and he observed the field of the sluggard, of the lazy man, right? And he noticed the grass was a little unkept, right? There was all these thistles on the ground, and that the bricks, the surrounding walls were all broken down. And so he observed what he saw, and then what the sage does, what the wise man does based on his observation, is he considers it. And once he considers what he's observing, he applied a lesson in his heart. And based on what he observed in that field and in that lesson, he says a little folding of the hands, a little slumber, a little bit of pressing the snooze button 2 more times, and poverty will come upon you like a thief, right? And the idea is this, that there are observable laws embedded in nature that we're supposed to receive and get, and we're supposed to apply those principles to our lives. That's just wisdom. And that's the fabric in which God had created this world. 2 of my favorite apologists are C.S. Lewis and John Lennox. Both of them from Oxford. John Lennox is a mathematician. And one of the things that he repeats over and over again that I really enjoy, that really clarifies things for me, he says that men became men of science, or people began to do science because they expected laws in nature. And the reason why they expected laws in nature is because they believed in a legislator, or they believed in a lawgiver. And basically what he's saying is people recognize that God is a God of order. And within creation, there is a fabric of laws and natural truths and realities that are there that he has placed. And it's our purpose, and we're meant to discover those. And we're meant to apply those things to our lives. One of those things would be, for example, what I just described, what Pastor was speaking into, that principle of adaptation, right? Like, you will go soft if you have a soft environment that doesn't push you. But you will get stronger and you will get harder if you're in an environment that's cultivating that for you. That's a principle. That's a law. Now, in What's Wrong with This World, we're doing this deep dive into sin. And as we're having this conversation about sin, C.S. Lewis, he brings out a principle. It's a law. It's natural law, and he's describing how this natural law applies to sin. Okay? And this law is called the law of, I forgot. Hold on. Check my notes. Because I know it by the reap-sow principle. But what do they refer to? The law of... Anyone remember? It takes me 2 seconds. Okay, I'm sorry. The law of returns. Okay? The law of returns is the reap-sow principle. So let me read to you the passage in Galatians to which he's drawing this law and this principle from. Okay? So remember, it's the law of returns, it's the reap-sow principle. So from Galatians chapter 6, verse 7. So remember, try to keep this in mind. Everything that I was trying to say is God's creative order is based on a set of laws. Okay, laws are expectations we have in the way things are meant to run, the way that things are. Okay, so that we can begin to understand how God functions. And what it says in Galatians chapter 6, verse 7 is, "Do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever one sows, that he will also reap." Okay, that's the reap-sow principle. So when I first heard that principle, that law, I only understood it partially. See, the principle itself, you could see, applies to the gym, right? You sow softness, you reap softness. You sow hardness, you reap hardness. You sow apple seeds, you get apples. You sow oranges, you get orange. That's how I understood it initially. But I realized after studying this passage and everything that he was saying in relationship to sin, I didn't understand in its fullness what the law of returns is and what the reap-sow principle actually functions as. Is when you plant one seed, like an orange seed, you get an orange, right? But you don't just get one orange. What do you get? A lot of oranges. Okay? That's the principle. The law of returns is you sow a particular thing, and you're going to repeat that, you're going to reap that same thing, but you're going to reap it in a multitude. Okay? So that's a very important law and principle that I didn't understand, but I recognize what the Bible is teaching and what Keller is trying to bring out is that is true with sin. Okay? We are imagers made in the image of God, and it says that we have this capacity, or we have this mandate to be fruitful and multiply. Okay? So then we want to be fruitful and multiply in the things of God, but the principle, the reality is, we could also be fruitful and multiply in sin. So then the warning is that we have this capacity, and the way sin actually functions is if you sow it, you will reap it. But when you reap it, you don't reap just one sin fruit. It's not a one for one. It's going to multiply, and ultimately what it's going to do is it's going to have you. It's going to completely own you. That's the danger of sin in relationship to the law of returns. Okay, so where is that most true, most evident, most clear for us? I would say the most applicable, easy way to consider that that's true is lying. Okay, lying is a sin. All right, and it's a sin that we can all recognize we have committed, and all of us are sinners, right? And then last week I spoke about the importance of recognizing whether or not we are minimizing sin, and the reality that in relationship with God and the way He views sin, it's no small thing to minimize sin, right? Especially in relationship with God. And I think we minimize lying a lot. But when we consider lying under the law of returns, under the reap-sow principle, what we can all recognize is what happens to us when we lie, when we participate in lying. Whatever we're reaping, it grows and it spreads. So whenever someone tells a lie, you lie to your friend, your spouse, your teacher, your boss. The challenge about that lie is now you have to remember that lie, right? And then either way, however you spoke about that lie, you also have to remember how you implied the thing that you said, okay? Now, psychologically, something typically happens to you when you do that. You begin to feel dissonance, right? Because you know you're supposed to be a good person, an honest person. You know society and relationships have to function through honesty, but you just lied. Or you implied something that you knew wasn't true. So then what do you begin to do to deal with the guilty feeling? You get to create reasons for it, right? You make up reasons for why it was necessary. You minimize the lie, you redirect the lie. And now, in your own psychology, in your own pathology, now you have created new pathways and reasons to lie or to imply untruths. And you have these, and now you're bringing that into the rest of the way that you see things and the rest of the way that you do conversations with the person you just lied to, right? And then this just grows and this just multiplies, okay? What's the problem with that? Problem with that is lies are unreality, okay? They're untruths, okay? So somewhere in our own psyche, somewhere in our own thoughts, we decided that we wanted to bring these untruths to reality. We wanted reality to conform and bend to the things that we wanted it to, even though we know it wasn't true. What are we doing? We're playing God. Okay, because in one sense, we don't trust God with the outcome. We don't trust the person that we're doing a relationship with the outcome. So because we're scared of whatever consequences might come from the truth, we bend, we distort, and we lie. Okay? And there are real consequences to this. When you become a person of the lie, like Scott Peck talks about, okay, you're going to fracture reality, because reality is actually embedded in truth. And when you bring in your lie, now truth is going to be pushing against that. And now society, you're going to have social consequences for lying. It's going to break social groups. Relationally, as your lies grow and suspicion grows, now people will trust you less based on those lies. So you're going to break relationship. And because of the twisting and the turning and the mental gymnastics we did to come up with the lie, to remember the lie, to bend the lie, to justify the lie, what happens to our psychology? We fracture that as well. So do we ever really get away with lying? We don't. Now, we might, in one sense, where no one else figures it out. But the Bible is clear about one thing. You can't fool God. Okay? So then, that's also part of this reality. And this is what Keller wants to bring up. Now, that's just one sin that we participate in, that we've all participated in, right? That multiplies, that there's a law of returns behind it. But that is also true with lust. That's true with greed. That's true with gluttony. That's true with pride. That's true with envy. That it starts off as one thing, and then it multiplies and multiplies until eventually what? It owns you. It has you. And now it's fractured your relationships. It's fractured your psychology. It's fractured society. Okay? So then we could observe as a principle and as a law that it's true. Sin falls under the law of returns. That you reap what you sow, and whatever you sow actually reaps a harvest. Okay? Now, I wanted to talk about this in relationship to laws for a particular reason. And the reason I want to talk about it in relation to the laws is, as I was doing all these mental gymnastics about what the law of reason is and how it applies to real sins that we commit, you know what I actually began to think about? I began to think about the Chronicles of Narnia. Are you guys familiar with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? Okay, there's a particular part of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe that I remembered that kind of brought the reality of the law of returns and the idea that God has created an order and a universe and a world that's embedded under laws that we're all under, that matter for us materially, physically, but spiritually, psychologically, all of these laws. Okay? But in Narnia, here's what happens. It's the story of a family of four, right? They enter into a wardrobe, Narnia, and in Narnia, it's always winter and never Christmas. It's always winter and never Christmas. Okay, a picture of a fallen world. And the so-called queen of this world, the so-called ruler, the White Witch, right? She has seduced one of the children. Okay, she has seduced one of the children with Turkish delights. Okay, with Turkish delights and the promise of being her prince and co-ruler of Narnia, she wants that particular person, Edmund, to betray his brothers and sisters, right? And the betrayal is simple. When they come into Narnia, she wants him to tell her so that she can capture them, obviously, but he doesn't know that. Okay? So then, if you know the story, does he betray? Does he betray his brothers and sisters? You guys know, sir? Yeah? Edmund? Does Edmund go to the White Witch? Yes. Okay? Edmund goes to the White Witch. Edmund is guilty. Okay? So now, according to the laws of Narnia, he is under judgment. Okay? The White Witch is legally allowed to take his life on the stone table. Okay? And she has this meeting with Aslan. Okay? Who is the king of Narnia, the real king of Narnia. Okay? He's the son of the creator of Narnia. Okay? And in this meeting, she says, you know the magic. That's the deep magic of Narnia, which says that if anyone betrays anyone, they belong to me. Basically, I get to take their life. Okay? So then what she's speaking of is the laws or the fabric in which Narnia was made. These underlying rules. And one of those rules is justice. Okay? This cold justice. And Aslan doesn't deny that that's true. And that's real. Okay? But then he offers her a deal. What's the deal? Edmund's life for my life. Okay? So that there could be a trade. Okay? We would call that substitution. Okay? Now, we found out in our Bibles that law is evident too in the fabric of God's creation. God has made a way for judgment to be substituted. That was embedded in the first covenant. That's why all the animal sacrifices, right? So that there is this law that sins can, in one way or another, somehow be covered in the blood. Life can be exchanged for that life. That's a law embedding that principle. So then Aslan, he steps in for Edmund. Now, if you know the story, this is a picture of Christ. Aslan is killed on the stone table, and then 3 days later, he resurrects. Right? The stone table is broken. Okay? Now there's witnesses to this event. The two sisters. And they say, Aslan, what happened? We saw you die. Right? And he said, the White Witch knew of the deep magic, but she didn't know about the deeper magic that existed before the creation of Narnia, which was if someone who was completely innocent stepped in and substituted, that it would undo everything that she had done. Okay? So then it speaks, or Lewis was tracking on with this idea of a deeper law embedded into creation, right? And we should all already begin to sense the gospel in that story. Okay? And what the gospel speaks to us about is sin. The wages of sin, according to the law, is death. Okay? That's the biblical law and principle that we know. All these ways that we have missed the mark with God, that we have participated in lies and sins that have corrupted society, broken relationships, messed with our own psychology, fractured our relationship with God and people. There is a price for that. There is a price that requires life. Okay? Underneath that law is a substitution principle. Okay? Where someone could substitute themselves on our behalf. But who would do that? Who would do that? And then there was a deeper law underneath that, that if that person was completely innocent, completely sinless, he would completely fulfill the wages that sin have required. So that the law of returns is true. Every way that we've participated in sin and humanity has participated in sin has multiplied exponentially in ways we can't even imagine. Okay? That's a law, and that's a reality of the way that the world just works. Nevertheless, there is a deeper law underneath that Christ will pay and satisfy that debt on our behalf. Okay? We all know that, right? That's why we're here. That's the gospel. Yes? Okay, so that was a long way of reminding us of what the gospel teaches us, but it was from a particular angle. So let me get to the fruit of our conversation today. That was not it. That was just a way to talk about what we need to talk about. What I'm starting to observe, what I recognize about humanity and the Bible, my worldview, it requires an understanding that there are a set of laws and principles that just govern nature and the way that things are meant to be. So even if we are covered in our sins like lying, when we participate in lying, there's still real consequences for it. Terrible consequences that fracture our psychology, fracture relationships, fracture society. Okay, so sin still has real consequences because those consequences are just embedded in the way that the world works. Okay, that's still true. And at the same time, it's still true spiritually and relationally before God. If I am in Christ, that He has fulfilled the payment of the justice that's required from me for having participated in sin. This is what C.S. Lewis would call moral law, right? So C.S. Lewis is huge on moral law because moral law was one of the great indicators on how he began to see his worldview and why Christianity was the most plausible and why God must exist, because the only reason why we have any sense that there is a right or wrong is because someone must have transcended that and created that law that's in all of us. Okay? That's his sense. Now, the reason I'm saying this, this conversation about laws and the natural order of things, is now I'm getting to my conversation with my mother-in-law, somebody. Okay? Now, in our conversation, we talked about many things, but one of the main things we talked about is the cheater's mentality. Okay? Now, we were talking about the cheater's mentality, and she was saying, be careful, because you have it. Okay? You have the cheater's mentality. And what is the cheater's mentality? The cheater's mentality is you're trying to beat the system. Okay? You're trying to get the most amount of benefits with the least amount of work. Okay? We call that the cheater's mentality. Okay? Now, the question is, can you get away with the cheater's mentality in this work? Okay? Now, I might be able to just say, no, you can't. But my no had no power, honestly. Even though something I sense, I recognize that's probably true, what would the direction of my life still go towards? The cheater's mentality. Because to be honest, amongst the many reasons why, I didn't understand yet why I couldn't get away with the cheater's mentality in light of the gospel. Does that make sense? Okay, so without thinking well, I still thought because I'm covered by grace through faith, that even the sin of my cheater's mentality would ultimately be covered in that way. And in one sense it's true, but here's where I'm getting at, okay? What's true at the same time that I'm covered by grace through faith is that there is a law and an order of God that is part of the fabric of creation, okay? And when things have unfolded in a certain way, certain truths just became part of creation. For example, creation was one way until Adam and Eve sinned. Okay? Then when sin entered into the world, creation now had a function in relationship to that event. Does that make sense? And in the Bible, it shows me that the world was a particular way until God, he sent the flood. And based on that event, now the world, it's like a locust or something, right? The world had to now adapt to that way. But guess what's still true? The laws and the orders that he embedded in the creation. Okay? So here's one thing that's still true on this side of Adam and Eve. None of us will escape death. Okay? We are all going to die. That's why we're still, we think about a worldview. Because a worldview has to have answers to these existential questions, right? Like what happens after you die. Okay, so after Jesus defeated death by rising again, which is an event that changed all of history. That's still true. What's observable as we observe creation and nature after that event is still what? That we're going to die. Okay? Now, does Jesus deny that in any of his teachings? He doesn't. He actually tells us something specific. He says we have to follow him into that death. Okay? That everybody has to die. That is a law and that's a principle. But now, because of him and what he's doing, he's called us to follow him into that death. Now, he even says it. He says, can a seed bear fruit without dying? No, it must first enter the ground, die, and then it'll grow and bear fruit. Okay? So what Jesus says is we have to die with him. Like that's the reality of life after sin has entered the world. We will all have to die with him. But then what has he done? What's the deeper magic that he created that came about from his obedience to God the Father through salvation? It's the reality and truth of the vine and the branches. Okay? We all will die. But in our death, if we remain in him and him in us, we will bear much fruit. Because apart from him, we can do nothing. Okay? So then that is the underlying principle that has to follow in the reality that we have to die. Okay? So now because that's true, because all of these come together, there is a call. We can't cheat death. Which means there is no real cheater's mentality in this. That in order to walk with him and follow him and take up his cross like he has commanded us, in order that we would remain in him and find life, we have to follow him in death, in the suffering, in the way that he's called us to. Okay, that is a law, and that's a principle. And then once I accepted that, I realized, oh, you can't cheat your way out of this. Then it makes sense. Everything that even Pastor was kind of stirred in and called to. Creating an environment and a community and a church that's not trying to get soft and trying to get comfortable. It's ready to follow Christ even in our day. Okay? Now, why is that necessary? It's because our hearts. Our hearts do everything it can to displace God as center, as enthroned, as the one who has dominion over it. And how do you know if God has dominion over your heart or something else? You know 3 ways. Is the things of God and the reality of God, are your emotions, do you get emotional because of the things of God, or does something else make you emotional? And then you know what takes dominion over your heart based on where you find satisfaction. Does running towards the things of God, spending time with God, being in communion with God, doing the things of God, is that what satisfies you most? Is that what you believe satisfies you most? Is that what you run towards satisfaction? Or does something else? And then priority. What do you prioritize? When you redirect your schedule, when you plan for the future, when you think about what you're doing in April and in May, when you think about, hey, when I wake up in the morning and before I go to bed at night, are you prioritizing God, the things of God, time with God, the things that God is calling you to do, or do you prioritize something else? So if your actions, your hearts, your thoughts, your mind prioritizes something else, gets more emotionally stirred about something else, or is satisfied or looking to draw satisfaction from something else, what have you done? Somewhere along the way, you have dethroned God. Okay? And you have made something else primary. You've made someone or something else first. That thing is now your God. That is your idol. And moving towards that, serving that, the product of that will be sin. Right? And all the ways that you try to protect that will be the reasons why you lie. Okay? And when you lie, you will fracture relationships. Those lies will compound. The law of returns will hit. And sin will spread. All that is still true. So what do we do? What must we do? What must we always do? We must have a community of people who know us, who are praying for us, who are doing life with us, showing us, telling us, reminding us, hey, actually, even though you've been seduced by that thing, you want God. You've given your life to God. You know God is the only one that you'll find real satisfaction in. Turn back, right? You'll pray, you'll worship, you'll fight and struggle. If what? If you want to remain in Him. Now, it'll be very easy to fade away into the things that you allowed to displace God. In order to get God back to the center, once you've allowed Him to be dethroned, what will you have to do? You'll have to fight like crazy. You'll have to fight like crazy, and people will have to fight like crazy for you and with you. Okay? That is the church. That is the church. Okay? If we don't build that kind of church, we will build a soft church where it would be easy for people to give in to the idols of their heart, to let God be the throne. Does that sound about right? Can we acknowledge, or can we get a little excited that that's the church that we want to be a part of? Yes. And that we want to grow in? But I'll be honest with you. I only want to do this, actually, if I only want to even say this message, if I'm trying to own this in my own heart. So everything I shared with you were the things that I was thinking about, but what drove that primarily as a meditation before God, an honest conversation before God, because what was also the fruit of my conversation with Samonim was she was telling me how important it is to be honest before God. Like, one thing, obviously, if lying is a sin and lying is that bending of reality, that fractured relationship with God, don't lie to God. Be honest about what you are moment to moment. So I was honest before God. When I heard Pastor Shin say, that's not why I gave up my medical practice, I sat in the reality of what he was talking about. Everything I just shared with you. To build the church that he's describing means to step into all the hard work and all the idol displacing that is required to make God primary. Okay? Guys, we even coming to set up the chairs before worship today. Okay? I don't know what your emotions were like. I don't know how you prioritize things. I don't know what was taking place in your heart, but I know mine, and that's just putting chairs, right? You don't have to bend my arm to go to the gym, okay? Or bend my arm to go to the movies. But I had to pray to God sincerely to move some chairs, to change my schedule, to show up in the heat when I had other godly things I could be doing, right? Like stewarding my family. Make sense? Who was part of my heart. So then, that's just chairs though. All the things that Pastor and Samonim and our leaders train us in, a lot of opportunities to die to self over and over again. And to be honest, remember, I have a cheater's mentality. This dawned on me as I was reflecting on my cheater's mentality. You know what my cheater's mentality is? I have the American dream embedded in my head. The real American dream. Retire at 40. Isn't that the American dream? You didn't think that way in high school? I was sold on multi-level marketing in high school. I was sold on, hey, you build a network of 5 really dedicated guys who get 5 guys, that and royalties. By the time you're 40, you could just live off that. That's in my head. This idea that if I work really hard, 7 years, I could live the next 50 years coasting. So then I'll go hard for 7 years so I can coast for 50 years. I treated my relationship with God that way. And it came up in my conversation with someone because she was talking about her last trip in Jeju and how there was the call to stay behind because God had convicted her that there was someone that she could give the gospel to. But this meant the possibility of losing money on a flight. Like, that's real. Those real consequences, that you lose the opportunity to come home and be with family and rest. That's real. Those consequences are still there. So she had to honestly bring that before God. This was the honesty conversation. God, you know me. I don't want to do this. But I want to be about your business. So would you change my heart? So when she told me this, honestly, my heart was like, man, you've been doing this for 30 plus years. And this is not the first time you've listened to the conviction and you've reaped the fruit of it, though. Doesn't that ever go away? Because I assumed it would. I assumed, man, 10 strong years of this, won't I have the heart that never has to wrestle with that anymore? And she's like, no. What you understand more is the depths of your sin. So then what that causes you to do is run to God faster, honestly. I said, oh, okay. I brought a cheater's mentality into it because I don't want to die. Or if I die, I only want to die for a short period of time so I could reach paradise on earth for a long period of time. This cheater's mentality. But that is not what God is calling me to. That's just not a principle of nature. That's not the way the world works. So now when I said this is all built on worldview, what's important to understand and get is a real sober, biblical wisdom understanding of, hey, naturally, there are ways that the world just works. And God, of course, will supernaturally intervene. But mostly, he wants you to trust him as you participate in the way the world works. And the way the world works is there are real multiplying consequences for sin. So don't participate in it, especially because there are real spiritual consequences. It hurts our relationship. Okay, that's the way the world works. Also, you reap what you sow in relationship to hard work. You should work hard for a long period of time, and the failure to do that will make you soft. Right? Like that is also true at the same time. So as I'm wrestling with all of this and thinking about Pastor, honestly, my question was why? Like, why would I do that? Okay? Like, do I have to do that? I sense what's coming. That the church that we're going to build, like, don't be fooled. Once construction is done, it's not less work. Like, oh, we're working so hard now because of construction. Work hard now for 8 months so we can coast on by for the next 10 years. Easy gospel. That was kind of in there for me. It's like, no. The call is, hey, when the new building comes up, he wants to turn it into a grindhouse. So we can be formed to finish the race with endurance, to show loyalty. Remember what John said? Loyalty is loyalty under pressure. Right? So why would you do that? You know, I did the wild card thing, and I did the hard, grimy gym thing, like my coach said, for 10 plus years. 10 plus years I did it. And you know, at the end of 10 years, you know what eventually happens? Your why is really clear. Why am I doing this? Okay? After 10 years, I realized I didn't want to be a professional fighter. I wasn't going for the belt. Right? All I wanted to do was fight, learn how to fight, so no one could mess with me. That's what it was. And after 10 years in that hard gym, I got it. I got what I wanted. I legit did. So you know what that meant? You know what that meant? There was no longer any reason for me to stay. So that grimy gym life, I left it. I was done. I got what I wanted out of it. Okay? So now, because I had that, I go to really nice gyms. And I know, I just need to tune up a little bit just to stay keeping what I have, because that's all I wanted. Okay? Now, the reason I bring that up is a lot of us are more on that side than we think. We came here, maybe we knew what we wanted, but 10 years down the road, I think it becomes more clear what you want and why you want it. You might have already gotten what you wanted. Hey man, my wife was chewing me out every day. I figured because my friends, my neighbors, their relationships with their husband and wife was working out well, and they got some kind of training at this place called IGM. Their marriage was fixed. All right, let's go in there. And then I endured for 5 years, and now me and my wife, we understand a little bit better what it takes to have a good marriage. We're good. So then, I don't need to fight so hard. I don't need to enter into every self-sacrificial opportunity, because ultimately what? I got what I wanted. That's what that gym was like. After 10 years, young bloods would always come up. New up-and-comers that want the gold. Now I got to fight them over and over again. Never, non-stop cycle. Finally, you just get tired of fighting. Tired of working out, tired of training, if your want is not there. So then I was wondering, as this new season is upon us, like, do I even want to do it like that? Like, how many Philippines trips until I graduate? Like, is that in there? Like, why would I do it for life? That's a real conversation between God and I. Because if I don't have that, I don't want to do it. Right? Did I already get what I wanted? And in that, believe it or not, just in my own personal time with God, because I really needed to know. I really need it before I start the next step. I got a movie. Best Western movie of all time. Anyone know what it is? Be bold, guys. Be bold and courageous. Best Western movie.
Seven Samurai.
You think Seven Samurai? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Different generations. Different generation. Okay, it's Tombstone. Anyone know Tombstone? Tombstone? Oh, I'm so sorry. Homework. Tombstone. Okay. Tombstone is the story of Doc Holliday and Wyatt Earp. It's actually Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday. Okay? Now, as the story goes, Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday is just his friend. Wyatt Earp is a sheriff. He was a sheriff, retired, entered this town called Tombstone, where he just wanted to retire, right? But his brothers, they wanted to bring the law to Tombstone because a gang of cowboys was kind of disrupting that town, and they wanted to settle down there. So his brothers became lawmen, but the cowboys, they didn't like that. So what the cowboys eventually did was they ended up killing Wyatt Earp's brother and shooting his other brother, which was a big mistake, because Wyatt Earp, he was a real lawman. Locust. You guys tracking with the story so far? Okay. Now his best friend was a guy named Doc Holliday. Doc Holliday was he had tuberculosis. That's why he was in the desert. This is a true story, by the way, made into a movie. But he went there, he was a dentist, he retired, and then he became a gambler and a gunslinger. And he was the best gunslinger. But he was like a non-lawman, but his best friend was a lawman. Now, in the movie, after Wyatt Earp's brothers, they get killed, or one of them gets killed and one of them gets injured. Now Wyatt Earp is on a personal mission to hunt down the cowboys. So he rounds up a couple other men. One of those men is Doc Holliday, right? And as the movie goes, they're hunting these cowboys. They're in all these gunfights. They're getting battered. And remember, Doc Holliday has tuberculosis. So he's like hawking up his lungs as he's trying to chase down these guys. And finally, there's this scene where they're all by the river. And Doc can barely breathe, right? He's just laying in a blanket, basically. His face is all pale. And the other guys, while Wyatt is gone, asks, "Hey, Doc, like, why are you doing this? Why are you, like, you don't need to do this. Why even do this? Why go after these guys? You're barely hanging on to life." And do you know what Doc says? He says, "Because Wyatt is my friend." And then you know what the guys say? They say, "Man, I got plenty of friends." And Doc says, "I don't." Right? One of the best lines I ever heard in a movie. And as I was praying to God, he gave me that line. And he was saying to me basically, how many friends do you really have? And how many friends do you have like me? I was like, in my heart, I know, you are no one like you. And like somebody's song, I am a friend of God. It's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing that Jesus, who paid the price for the sins and the way that they've compounded the way they do, and the idea that he is my friend, but he's also like a spouse, and all those idols that I was talking about, that's a way of doing, that's like adultery. And I had been cheating on him over and over and over again, but this friend is always inviting me back, always waiting on me, always just being there for me. I don't have a friend like him. And so I don't even know most of my life how to do relationship. I've never been a real friend. Not in the way that Jesus is showing me. And the laws of the universe teach me through the Bible what a friend really is. I've never been a good friend. And Jesus is saying he's my friend. And I want to be Jesus' friend. From this point on, I know the reason why I'm going to enter into doing church this way, following and trusting God, entering into death with him, remaining in him, doing life with him, is because Jesus is my friend. And he calls me friend. And I want to learn what it means to be a friend. That's why I'm doing it. But what I'm asking you, and I'm bringing to your attention is, as you step into the reality of what it means to follow Christ in relationship to just the truths that are embedded in the fabric of life, the laws of nature, what it's going to take actually to die, not because you can escape death, no one can, but this hope and this reality and this truth, you can come out living if you remain in him. That remaining is to struggle with him and to do it in this church. Got to know your why. It's got to be your why, not my why. But I invite you now to really think about your why in relationship to all these things. Okay, so let me pray for us. Heavenly Father and Lord Jesus, I thank you that you would allow me and allow all of us to remember that you are so, your love is so beyond anything we could ever imagine. And even though it's true, our sins are worse than we could have ever understood in its full capacity, it's also true that you really just love us beyond anything we could ever have hoped for. So I ask that that truth would drive everything that we do, and it would give us a fighting spirit to step into you and to trust in the journey that you've called us into, to die with you so that we could live with you. So I ask for your mercy and your grace over all of us, and we bless your name for being so faithful when we've been faithless. Thank you for all these things. In Jesus' name I pray.